Many in our area will know Anthony Rapp from, of course, creating the role of Mark in the original Broadway production of Rent and in the film version of Rent, plus numerous other film, TV, and theater projects. And our audience may remember a few years ago in Fort Lauderdale, Mark visited with the WLRN Film and Literary Club, and I called you Mark.
Yeah. Wouldn't be the first time.
Okay, one more time. Many in our area will know Anthony Rapp from, of course, creating the role of Mark in the original Broadway production of Rent, the film version of Rent, numerous other film, TV, and theater projects. And many in our audience may remember Anthony from participating a couple of years ago when he visited Fort Lauderdale for the WLRN Film and Literary Club. Anthony Rapp, thanks for taking the time to talk to me.
My pleasure, thank you.
Well, I want to get it out of the way here because I know every interviewer asks you this question, but what is it like, after all these years, to be back in the role of Mark in Rent?
It's actually been really tremendously rewarding and in some ways easier physically and emotionally and vocally than it even was back in the day of originally doing it. Adam and I both have discovered that we've learned a lot about how to really take even better care of ourselves. I mean, I've never been like a crazy person in terms of like party animal or anything, but it was so stressful initially. It was exciting and thrilling to be in the original show, but it was also really intense and crazy. And Jonathan Larson died, and my mom was very sick, so there were a lot of external pressures and a lot of craziness going on.
Yeah.
So this time we get to just really be focused on getting ourselves prepared every day for doing the show, and so we've and plus we get to travel everywhere, all over the country, and including to Tokyo and Seoul. So it's been a very exciting year, and we're blessed to have a fantastic group of people that we're doing all this traveling with and doing the show with every night, and the audience response has been amazing. So it's been a wonderful full circle, in some ways surprisingly rewarding experience.
And how many years ago was it when you first got involved? Because you were involved at the very, very beginning during the workshop, is that right?
Yeah, it was 15 years ago, essentially. 15 years ago, September, I think.
Wow, 15 years, jeez.
Yeah, and then I started the off-Broadway rehearsal, and then I was in it on Broadway and then we moved to Broadway, and then I was in it on Broadway for almost 2 years, and then Adam and I and two other original cast members went over to London and did it there for 6 months. So it was essentially like a 3-year period from starting at off-Broadway rehearsal through London, and then not doing it at all for many years until coming back to the movie, and then Adam and I came back to it 2 years ago in New York for 10 weeks after a couple of years after the movie came out.
Right. And to go from the workshop to off-Broadway to Broadway and then creating it for film, talk a little bit about your experience and what you thought to make it maybe perhaps a little different for the film version.
Well, it's kind of like what I sort of think of as a showbiz miracle that 6 of us from the original cast got to do the movie in the first place, because it never happens that many people get to recreate their roles on film.
Right.
It never happens. So it was a great, thrilling drop out of the sky moment when we got to do it in the first place. And then the actual experience of being on the set every day was just joyful, because film, making a movie can be kind of a grind, and it's long hours every day, and it can be tough. And in this case, because we were doing that every day with people that we loved and respected and knew intimately, it was just like spending every day with some of your closest friends. So it was we were just so fortunate. And Chris Columbus is a great person. I knew him from years ago. I did Adventures of Babysitting with him in 1987. So,
oh my goodness, I forgot you were in that film, The Adventures of Babysitting.
We had a relationship already. Yeah, so it was just I'm probably going to use the same sort of keywords over and over again, which include fortunate, lucky, blessed, all of those things. And that was making the movie was just another example of that.
And what about your thoughts on the final product of the film? Because it certainly was a bit different. The stage version is mostly, if not all, sung, and they sort of changed it up a little bit for the film. What did you think of that choice?
Well, I think that, it's a different animal. It's a different medium. And I think that the ultimate the purest expression of Rent, I think, is the stage version. Mm-hmm. But I think Chris was very successful at finding a way to tell the story on film that didn't betray its roots, but also found a way to clarify some things. And I mean, when you're making a musical movie, you're making it. You have choices to make in so many areas of how you're going to treat the musical numbers. And like, for instance, in Chicago, all the musical numbers are fantasy. Mm-hmm. And in Rent, the choice was made that we were still going to be in the real world, walking down the street singing. And that was the choice we made. But he also made the choice to establish our world also through dialogue. So, I mean, I think it's successful in that and on those terms. But people can argue it. So.
Yeah, well, it's still a beautiful piece of work. The film is really beautiful. Also, you directed a version in South Africa. Is that right?
Yes, that was.
How was that experience that you were actually in control of the direction of the production?
Well, I mean, it was really an interpretation of Michael's direction. Mm-hmm. Michael Greif, our original director. It was my sort of refracting it through my lens. But essentially, his were the building blocks, and so it was really about communicating it with the cast, designers, to as fully express our version of that, but it still was so strongly based on what we had all done in the past. So it was an amazing. In South Africa, there are so many incredibly talented actors, singers, but because of all kinds of laws of because it's still considered kind of a third world country,
right?
It's very hard for them to have the opportunity to work in other countries. I mean, they had a little bit of opportunity in Europe, a little bit of opportunity maybe in Australia, but certainly it would be very hard for them to get opportunities in the States. So they are starving for modern work.
Yeah.
Because it sort of takes a while for stuff to get over there to be produced, and their musical theater audience is still developing. So these young actors were so excited to get the chance to do Rent, and they had the most incredible work ethic and spirit, and they just devoured the opportunity. And I have a new set of amazing friends over there.
That's excellent. Now, coming back to the States, Rent recently closed on Broadway. Do you think that had something to do with not only the economic situation that we're in, but also how times have changed since it debuted on Broadway? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I just think it's a matter of, every long-running show starts to, trend downward at some point, and I think it's just, it had a very, very long run. I mean, it was over 12 and a half years, and that's one of the longest running shows of all time. So I just think it's probably a matter of that, and, maybe other factors too, but, the audience, the audience that comes to New York, many of them would already have seen it, and there were all these new shows to see, so... it's hard for me. I'm not a market researcher. I don't know for sure.
Okay, well, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but...
No, I mean, it's an interesting question of why ultimately shows, Phantom appeals to the, group sales. So when, a tour group is putting together their tour to New York, it's very easy for them to sell like 50 tickets, 100 tickets to this group. Now, a show like Rent would be probably still a little more, you wouldn't get like the senior citizens group going to Rent necessarily. They would go to Phantom. You know what I mean? That's part of the economics of Broadway too. So.
Of course. Well, now you're touring in this fabulous Broadway production with Adam Pascal, as you mentioned. What is it like when you guys are on stage? Does it just bring you back? Does it feel like it was when in the old days when you were in the original cast? Are you just smiling at each other and loving it?
Well, I mean, it feels like it did, but it also feels like it now as well. Which is very exciting. Though we both feel like